I'm Julie Persofsky, and I am the co-host of our weekly CS Talks live with CS leaders.
And I'm Elizabeth Italiano, co-host and moderator of CS Talks. Over the past month, we have hosted some of the best-in-class executives and veterans in customer success. They have brought some incredible insights, and today we're going to give you the highlights.
So we saw it coming. We're a global organization at Winning by Design, and fortunately, we were able to learn and watch our colleagues in China go through this. But we still weren't able to really know what was happening. And other companies, they saw it coming, but what were they going to do about it? And no one really knew how to handle it. And so I think jonzifkin from Italiano really captured it well, some of our feelings that we experienced when we first went on this lockdown. Let's hear from John.
It is all uncharted territory. I think every day that we wake up, there's new surprises and things and challenges that I think that we all need to deal with in a way that we haven't really been prepared for. None of us on this call, I don't think anybody's ever been in a position where they've understand the characteristics of a pandemic and what to do with it. So it's scary, but at the same time, I think I go through each day feeling very reassured that my colleagues and my counterparts and everybody on this call are going through the same thing that I'm going through.
I think when we were on that call and John said it's scary, it's totally scary, and we're not alone. Those were really feelings that I know that I've been feeling. I know others have been feeling. In addition to that, though, some people have really been stepping up and doing some incredible things. Liz, remember what JB was saying?
Yeah, he had some really interesting things that they were doing at BombBomb around, bringing positivity out of COVID. So let's cut over to JB's explanation of what they're doing.
We took a hard look at the budget and freed up some incentive cash around some specific core competencies that we were really interested in recognizing right now. We have some significant, well-known businesses here in Colorado Springs that had to lay people off. And I'm like, maybe we could help them and they could help us, and we could find some way to welcome them in for a part of the time. So that's been a really kind of a cool way, to connect. Obviously, we're not in the office anymore, so we're not buying lunches. So all of that money has gone to Springs Rescue Mission, Mary's Home, Karen Share, all of our snacks. The admin team went in and grabbed all the office snacks and got those distributed to the homeless as well.
Even just something as simple as taking your snacks and your lunch budgets and donating that to food shelters and people who are in need at this time. A simple yet such an effective thing, which is great. Other companies we heard about, and we know about this, we're seeing in the news, companies are having such big impacts. They've had to lay off up to 40% or more of their teams. That's really hard as an employee, as a manager. And I remember Molly from BounceX sharing some great perspective on how she's been able to keep her team motivated despite having to deal with some of these layoffs.
We've really tried to kind of lead with maximum empathy, both for, impacted employees as well as the employees that are there. And this sounds very trite, but be more vulnerable than we would normally be. So I think, this is the first time this generation has experienced a downturn of any kind, really, for most of my workforce, at least. And so talking them through times that you've been through it in the past, even though this is very different, and hearing kind of the Marriott CEO talk about Marriott being around even in the Great Depression and this still exceeding that, talking about those stories, but not trying to say, we know this is different and it's okay to have all of these feelings. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to have imposter syndrome, for staying.
Yeah, it's a tough time for companies dealing with layoffs, and it is important to keep things positive and recognize the fact that all of this that's happening, the layoffs, what's happening in the world, is really impacting the cognitive load, which then impacts your professional and personal life. So we really have to think about, and as Molly talked about, staying positive and supporting those who have been laid off, as well as the people who were able to stay on board.
And that's just a whole other element that we have to deal with now as managers. And the interesting piece is all bringing together. And if you think about everything that we've just heard in our highlights video right up till now, it's such a different time. And we're shifting. If we can shift gears now to think about, I'm so used to this time where work is work and home is home, and they're all blended together right now. And there's benefit to that too. I think we heard a lot from a whole bunch of people around how this is a more human time and how this is really impacting our relationships with our employees. Let's hear from Chris Contreras from Adderall. He shared some really great insights on how he's managing his team right now.
You don't want to be a helicopter manager in this type of situation. We found that our teams have been performing significantly better because they have the flexibility to take a break when they need to, and then with their kids get some homeschooling, which I think I'm amazed by all the parents that I had the pleasure of working with that actually now have 3 jobs. They're teachers, their parents, and their employees as well. So it's been an interesting experience to help them as well in those situations.
Yeah, I think it's, really about providing your teams flexibility and the respect and a little bit of autonomy as well. I've heard some horror stories about how some managers are responding to this, that they want, cameras on, their employees' computers from 9 to 5 to make sure they're.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is one of the ways that, I've heard a few times. So, we really have to make sure that we're trusting our teams and giving them some flexibility, not being that helicopter manager, to Chris's point, and really looking at their deliverables and supporting them, and making sure that the focus is on how they're supporting their customers. And as Natasha mentioned, customer success, the time is now for customer success. The spotlight is really on customer success. And so it's our time to shine. And so we want to make sure that we're lifting up our customer success teams and providing them and enabling them what they need in order to be successful. So let's take a look at what Natasha had to say.
I feel this is CS's time to shine because company-wide, companies are having these spending freezes. So win-loss, new deals, new business deals are slowing down, but it's all about doubling down on your customers and making sure that they're getting value.
Jeff Cann also shared some really interesting perspective on, what's happening right now in CS.
I often think they're the shock absorbers for the business. We're the ones to immediately be able to get our hands around sort of what's happening, but we're also the ones to be able to help guide our customers and our companies through. Our companies rely on us just as much as our customers do. And so, final thought on that is let's not let go of this sort of overly human phase that we're in right now, where barriers are kind of coming down with customers and internally. And I think there's one thing that we continue on out of this. It's being human and being human with our customers. I think we're all having interactions with them in better and deeper ways than we ever have.
I love everything that Jeff said about being the shock absorbers for the business, and even more so right now for our customers, for our teams. And how are we doing this? What are some good tips that we've learned around how to deal with this changing time, and how our interactions with our customers are changing? Chris Petko from Uberflip shared some really great thoughts around what he's seeing from customers. And what's interesting, is they are actually needing more and they want to spend more time with some of their vendors now. Let's hear from Chris.
Coworkers and our teams, our customers are no different. Everyone's working from home. And everyone's stressed, and everyone is now exposed to this new isolation and quarantine, and we have to be cognizant of that as well. So I think how we do customer success and how we interact with our customers will obviously change. And I think it's funny, we've seen an increase in things like support tickets, because I feel like we just have more customers at home wanting more interaction. With more of a remote work front, you're going to see, to echo what Natasha said earlier, and what I've always firmly believed in, is hiring skill over geography. And it's going to force leaders to become better leaders and be more clear with expectations from employees. What is success and how do you achieve that success in your role?
Those are some fantastic insights that these leaders have shared. Now, there's so many changes with our teams and customers right now, and Holly Tiessen and Kate Hand share some tips on how to best reach out and connect with your customers right now.
We can be authentic in that outreach. So who is calling on who at a particular customer, and what's that conversation look like? And we can do that to a certain extent because we've got about 200 customers and we can get our arms around them. You have to be able to do that at scale, but you pick your places. And I hear empathy a lot, and I would just be authentic in whatever it is you're going to do, and do it, like, because that executive outreach is important.
There's a real human element. What I'm noticing when I'm connecting with customers is, due to that shared experience, it's almost like you've broken down barriers initially just by having that shared experience that we're all going through.
We have never been at a time when we are in the same shared experience, like Kate Hand said. We're in the shared experience across the world. And so there's never been a time that's more appropriate to be real, to be authentic. And I want to just remind everyone what Holly said is, it's really complex sometimes. You have all these customers and you want to reach out and you want to segment and you want to do it right, but also just do it, right? Just pick up the phone and call them and have a real conversation with them. This segues really nicely into hearing about Heather Foeh and Jocelyn Brown talk about, the human connection and how you can tie a little bit to advocacy and what that can do with your customer relationships, and also around, getting some of that advocacy that we're looking for.
It is a silver lining to all this right now, is that human connection, right? That you're seeing people in their real environment, and you're getting the chance to see potentially things they're interested in, like their favorite sports team logo is behind them on their wall in their office. This is a great time to make note of that. And then when it's time to thank them for something in the future, you could send them something related to that favorite sports team, and so don't let this opportunity go by, this chance to get to know your customers without doing something with that information.
Talk about an opportunity to build advocacy, right? Like your best relationships, we were talking a little bit about this, are forged under fire. This would qualify as a fire. So the people that you're in the trenches with now, the people that you're, working so hard to serve, acknowledge that. And that's really when you build super strong advocacy. And
the human element is so important, and it's absolutely relevant to, especially, in today's economic times. And what we also have to make sure that we're doing is tying in value and impact into this human connection. And, with that said, companies, they do operate on revenue. So let's shift gears and talk about that. Julie, you gave some important notes on how to retain customers, as did Holly Tiessen.
Sometimes their strategy means you need to give them your product for free for the next 3 months, because the answer is going to be they either leave you or they stay with you for free. So either way, you're not getting paid. Let's make it a scenario where they are still your customer.
Generally speaking, our customers are sticking with us. We're not seeing them want to leave. So the conversations are more around billing and how to handle the renewals. So they want to keep going with us. How can we do that together?
At the end of the day, our businesses are still running, right? And we need to keep in mind what's happening now, but we also very much have to think about what that future holds, and keeping those logos so that way, after all this, when their businesses start to ramp up again, they're still a customer. They still, think fondly of you and want to continue to do business with you. And it's also not just about, strategies around keeping your customers. we've also heard about companies that have actually needed to pivot because they're in an industry that it doesn't exist anymore. Like jonzifkin here, they're in the trade show and events business that doesn't exist right now. So let's hear about some really interesting things that they've done at Intellityx.
And so our revenues went from up here all the way down to nothing in very short order. And so we had to very quickly, in a matter of 48 hours, figure out a plan on how we're going to bridge the gap between, what used to be very good times and what will be good times again.
A lot of companies have had to pivot quickly and change their offerings, and others have had to make quick decisions to modify their existing plans. And we had some really fabulous discussions during the Eloqua reunion episode around all of those changes that Jocelyn, Heather, and Anusha, and they went into some insights and shared some strategies about how they're keeping up to speed with the changing times, and shared some of the plans that are currently in the works.
Segmentation has taken a front seat for me in terms of the customer. I'd had a looser segmentation than I desired. And I think we're really distilling down to what really matters, right? Our customers are now really, it's very clear to me what matters. There's not a lot of noise around peripheral things because people only have time for what's going to make an impact and what matters. So it's a little bit easier for me to some degree to start understanding what I really need to apply to a customer in terms of resources or surround them to take care of what really, really matters.
So Workfront is at that interesting size. There's about 1,000 employees. So it's that size where there's pockets of knowledge. And if you're a new person, or even if you're not a new person, sometimes it's hard to find the answer to something. Where does something exist? And so as you bring on new CSMs, they have to spend a fair bit of time figuring out those answers themselves. And that's not an efficient way to do it, right? And it worked when things were smaller, but that's sort of still been the plan. And so we're flipping that around a bit. And we've taken someone who was a CSM and put her in the role of, we'll call it, for lack of a better word, sort of CSM enablement. And basically she finds those things and shares them with the entire team, and doesn't just share them, but sets up enablement on them, right? So,
are you seeing some shifts in your organization around becoming a little bit more focused on profitability or revenue efficiencies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of funny because I think part of it also with all of this change is there's so much momentum that had been built, right? And we were actually coming up at the end of our fiscal year as all of this was happening. And so, just imagine, like end of Q4. So you've got all those rhythms that are already in place. We were in the midst of our FY21 planning, getting things literally ready for the board to go and approve. And so there was all these exercises and activities that were underway. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, so we sat in an exec meeting, and it was a little bit hokey, but I actually made them take a moment of silence with me for the old plan.
We just heard some really important things that these women have done. Speeding up plans that were on the back burner previously, as a result of COVID. And also, and that's what Jocelyn was saying, and what Heather was saying around taking the time they have right now, because it's not as busy, to actually implement some things to support them in the future. And the last thing, what Anusha was saying around taking a moment to appreciate and be grateful for all the work that was put into prior plans, and in order to almost throw them out the window and start again, because their world has totally shifted and changed from the world they know before. I will say that my favorite question that I asked was, talking about just the world of customer success. We have these veterans, people who have been doing customer success for, decades, and they've had an opportunity to see what's been happening, how customer success have shifted from, from when they started to today, and even predict a little bit into the future. So we're going to hear now briefly from JB, Molly, and Jesse.
Are there new problems that have been exacerbated by this pandemic that we have, products or solutions to solve? have those products, have those problems been reframed or changed, I think is a really, really interesting part of the conversation right now, and a great place for us to add value. Remember that you have an obligation to bring that to bear for the success or failure of the customers that you're serving. If you really believe in what you have, now is a great time to get very clear on that and use that as fuel to step into that conversation.
This time, it's really circling both the science and the art is coming back, and that ability to really be that trusted advisor and get into conversations beyond this about what's really going on in their business.
One of the risks, though, of all this data is that we lose that connection or that human element. And now more than ever, this, I see that at the forefront. If I'm to look ahead a year, maybe beyond, the opportunity is to figure out how we can deliver that type of experience and create those types of connections at high scale. Right. One of the issues, when you look at all the data, you can get caught in that, and the customer gets reduced down to a score or a number, and that's just not going to cut it.
Those are some fantastic insights. I think one of my new favorite quotes is that we have an obligation to bring that value to bear. And so what we're hearing is that customer success is all about value and those connections. And I think if we fast forward to a year from now, one thing that we will see change or continue to evolve is that customer success is going to start tying that and being even more rigorous about tying that to revenue. Because when we think about the economic climate that we're in, our source of revenue is our customer base through renewal revenue and through expansion revenue. And how do we capture that? Value and through connection. So I think, all of those points were fantastic.
Yeah, we're really lucky to get to hear from some incredible people. And we're going to continue. So if you liked what you heard in this highlights episode, check out some of the full length episodes. We could only capture a little bit, but we wanted to share with you some of the best of the best. And please continue to tune in to our weekly CS Talks. We have some great new customer success executives coming in the next few weeks. Liz, thanks for being such a great co-host, and thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Bye.